All right, hi everybody. Welcome to the Santa Cruz Queer History webinar series. We were already muted our devices, and we've talked about the opening of the Santa Cruz County MAH Queer Santa Cruz exhibit, and that's part of the connection with these webinars because we hope that once this pandemic ends, you'll all get to come to the Santa Cruz and go to the Santa Cruz MAH and see the in-person exhibit. It's important to realize that Santa Cruz County queer history parallels the national LGBTQ history movement. Santa Cruz County people impacted the national LGBTQ rights movement and continue to do that today. We know that when UC Santa Cruz and Cabrillo College came into our communities in the 60s, it impacted our community in other ways, and we know that Santa Cruz County has always been an inclusive community overall. Just a little quick LGBTQ history to put this in context. In the 50s, we had this thing called the Lavender Scare, and during that period of 50s and 60s, there was lots of persecution and laws against LGBTQ people. But in response to that, the Mattachine Society was established in Los Angeles, and the Daughters of Bilitis was established in San Francisco, which began to educate everybody about who we are and those sorts of things. The Stonewall riots happened in '69, and Santa Cruz organized with a first group called LGMU in '74, and the first Santa Cruz Pride was in '75. Related to the women's movement, the first women's music festival started in the '70s. And again, I mentioned those other areas. And then in '86, the UCSC Women's Studies program became more official, and lots of stuff grew out of that. But more importantly about what we're talking about today is our Dyke Trans March in Santa Cruz, of how that's enhanced pride in Santa Cruz. As you can see here, that established in 1994. There's links on the slides and in the overall links about the ongoing work of the people who you're going to hear about today. Here's some early Dyke Trans March slides and some photos just for people who may not know about it, that generally it starts at the town clock and continues down Pacific Avenue, and there's some photos of some of our speakers. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and move into my questions to ask all of you, to start with sharing a little bit about who you are, what brought you to Santa Cruz, and what connects you to the Santa Cruz Dyke Trans March. So Venus, what if you start us off? Except you're on mute.
Yes, thank you for the help there. Well, first of all, I want to hail up the original people that were here, like Gabe, who made it happen, and there is like a deeper story to how it all came about. I worked at Herland. I moved here in '93. I believe the first Dyke March was in 1993. In June, I think, maybe, or May. One of the founders will know more about that. And I got here about, the following fall. So I wasn't queer yet. Of course, I got a job, and my boss was queer, and so were all my coworkers. And by the end of the week, so was I. Luckily enough, I was in Santa Cruz because and I was dealing with some pretty awesome, amazing dykes that were really super proud and super active. So they kind of got me up to speed really quick on how important it was to be out. And so I got right on the train. I'm a creative person, so I stumbled into a band. I started going to Herland, and then I ended up getting a job at a queer cafe called Casanova next to the Blue Lagoon that operated for a few years. So I got into the queer scene and eventually started working at Herland, into the hub of all the Dyke scene, and, got to know all these incredible people in this room here, and started getting involved with the Dyke March from either being a musical participant through music and the bands I was in at the time, or eventually I got into the organization with the crew. I used to be one of the people that gave a lot of, oh, it could be like this or it could be like that, until I started getting into organizing and realizing that it's amazing. It's whoever shows up. We don't we don't steer it. We just create the platform and we get the permit and we get the word out, and we're there every freaking year to make sure this very important thing continues on, because as you can see, it's more important than ever that we do these queer visibility actions. So I'm all about queer visibility, and so that's what the Dyke Trans March is all about for me. It's about getting our beautiful faces out there and showing the world that, yeah, we exist and there's a lot of us, and yeah, we're formidable and we can take care of ourselves and we can support each other and help each other get there. You know, so that's what we're all about. We're like a support system, and we're very proud to keep this beautiful thing going.
Great. Valerie, you want to talk a little bit about how you ended up in Santa Cruz and connecting with the Dyke Trans March?
Yeah, let's see. I came to in 1973, I came to Santa Cruz County, and we just recently moved into town last couple of years. I've always lived out in the county and not in the city, and came here with my former husband, Mike, and I came here because I was not well, because I had been in a car accident and felt like I needed to get out of society to get well and to do some healing, and stayed in the woods for many decades, 45 years. And so here I am, and in the have always, I guess I could say, I just, sort of identify like I never met the right dog, and that my being queer is just part of who I am. And so in the 90s, I went to Herland and said, hey, and I was in 98, and said, what's up with the Dyke March this year? I don't see any advertisement for it. And Venus actually said, well, it's not happening. Nobody's organizing it this year. And went, oh, okay, that's not good. So let's just organize it. And made some posters and went to the bank. But it had been kind of cloistered a little bit. It was back in the area which is now the mob sort of central gathering, Abbott Square section, but it was off the street and cloistered. And so we thought, let's get in the street. And so 98 is when I started organizing, and just worked with my team. I don't know, I guess you guys were all there, because here we still are. And right. So it was just, it's, as Venus, to echo what you said, V, it's really a collaborative effort. And as all good things are, they're, in my opinion, they're ever evolving. They don't become static. They don't become too weighty at the top. I mean, we're happy to include anybody who wants to do the work, whatever it is. We're always happy to be inclusive. Inclusivity is great. As a matter of fact, that's how it became the DTM. It's about inclusivity. And the party is, and we're sort of like, or I'm not going to speak for everybody, but I'm sort of shallow like that. The more folks there are, the more fun it is, and the less work there is to do. So that's kind of how that happened. And yeah, long story short, it's good. It's fun. Still fun.
Melissa, you want to share how you ended up in Santa Cruz getting connected to the march?
I think Gabe should go next.
Oh, Gabe?
Because,
okay,
yeah.
Gabe. But you're going to have to unmute. There you are. Okay, good.
Valerie, I am your dog.
I know, my best dog. I have met the right dog, but she's,
Speak up, because we can't hear you on the sound very good.
You got to listen real good, baby cake.
Okay, got it.
Hi, well, I came to Santa Cruz shortly after Valerie did. But I didn't meet her until we started to try to go surfing together. And my connection with the Dyke March actually deepened as I was a co-founder of the Bulkhead Gallery. And each of us co-founders were some stripe of queer. But I notably remember Mary Schaller wandering into the Bulkhead Gallery one afternoon to introduce herself. She just moved to town. She was cruising around like a detective with her little pad of notepaper, and she started taking notes and asking me who she should meet and where she should go. I said, "Hey, you're here, man." I figured somehow this was auspicious, and indeed it was. We were on the cusp of forging an amazing solidarity with Santa Cruz Gay Pride, and it was because of the coalition between Bulkhead Gallery and Pride that the 1999 Pink Saturday Street Party was such a successful event. It was a community relationship that deepened due to a mutual honor and respect between Pride and the Bulkhead, and a tireless commitment to activism and lots of fun. Way lots of fun.
Thanks. Melissa, you want to add in now?
The next person that should go should be Mimi, because these are the reasons I joined.
All right. Mimi, then you're up. What brought you to Santa Cruz and how'd you get involved?
I was straight when I moved to Santa Cruz. It was okay, I was a different kind of dog when I moved to Santa Cruz. But now I'm just an old dog on the porch. Yeah, I don't really remember. Let's see. I do remember the Bulkhead being so radical and scary. It was like friggin' edgy. It was really edgy. And like, you know, I'd just like walk by and kind of peek in. I wasn't really cool enough to enter. So, yeah, the Bulkhead was a trip. And then suddenly it went away. It was so sad. I never really understood, you know, what ended all of that. Did you lose the space? I wasn't sure.
The rent.
And then I remember this place called the Rent. Yeah, that always comes along. I remember this place called What is Art? The earthquake. Yeah, the earthquake. And then I completely got involved with the Dyke March through Valerie. I don't even think but I started working at Wham and Val was involved and it was just part of the job. So we definitely.
Yeah, it was. Everybody had to work on it.
Everybody that was around.
Everybody straight, gay, even the dogs.
Oh yeah, right. There were lots and lots of straight people that paraded with us over the years. That's for sure. Yeah.
And made posters and did all kinds of work. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And solidarity. And especially this one woman, her name was Laura Hoffman. I remember one time she joined us in the middle of the Dyke March and she was like, "Hey, what's going on?" And we were doing that cheer, "We're here, we're queer, we're not going shopping." And she was like, "Uh-oh, I did come here to go shopping."
Right?
She was like, "Uh-oh, I did come here to go shopping."
Yeah.
So she was funny, and that was her first experience in a Dyke March. And I think it was, the Santa Cruz Dyke March has always been known as a safe Dyke March, in the sense that, you know, a lot of people who are coming out have come to it over the years, and people who just want to have fun, lots of supporters. Yeah, it's a blast.
Great, thanks for that. Melissa, is this a time for you to go now, or?
Okay, sorry. Now everyone knows why I joined. I mean, look.
Well, go ahead.
Take us
back to the what got you connected to begin with.
and to the Dyke Trans March. So I
Yeah.
have to tell you, I am from New York City.
Okay.
And in 1989, I went to Fordham University and we had our first AIDS walk because of one of my professors. And it was, no, it was 1988. It was, HIV and AIDS was a very confusing time. I was young and I was mostly around gay men as friends and community, and people were getting sick and dying, and it was a horrible time.
Yeah.
And it was really weird. And so I got to do the first AIDS walk, be part of it in New York, and then be part of putting together a group called the Gay Men's Health Crisis. And I really didn't understand anything that was going on, just that people that I loved were getting sick and stuff. And then I moved to Santa Cruz because I met someone that was going to UCSC. And when I came out here, I realized I could live on vacation because coming from New York City, I was like, awesome. And I ride a bike. But my first Dyke Trans March was not in Santa Cruz. I'm from New York. I went to New York for the Dyke March, and it was crazy because at that time in history, Gabe, I need your help. What the Washington March was a week before ours or a month?
I think it was a week.
Right. So there was this march in Washington for queer rights, and then the next week was the Dyke March in New York City. And we stepped out into traffic on Fifth Avenue, hundreds of dykes. It was unbelievable. And I made my friend Senorita Cragita come with me from Santa Cruz to the Dyke March. Whereupon, when we were standing at the Dyke March, all these dykes were like, you're not a girl, and I had to be like, shut up, right? So that's where the Dyke March was. And it was amazing. I ran into friends from San Francisco, friends from growing up, and like, we're here, we're queer, and 10% is not enough. Recruit, recruit, recruit. So I knew I was in the right place. And then the next day, ACT UP had a demonstration, and that was so important. And just to grow up in a world that was like, well, you know, you are gay, that's why you're dying. And to be able to stand in the streets and say, fuck you, we are valued, we're important, you know? And there's something very important about anger. I think that people think anger is unhealthy, but the same way that it's how you express it. So the Dyke March gave me a forum to express my anger that I hadn't had before. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Do you remember what year that New York Dyke March was?
Same year as the one here.
So
What was that, Venus?
93.
in 93.
93.
So then you came back and did the Santa Cruz Dyke March after that?
No, then after that, I was hanging out with Gabe, and Gabe was like, hey, Melissa, you want to be part of this? And I was like, hell yeah. And then Mimi was part of it. And then I was like, hell yeah. And Val. And so then, I mean, Santa Cruz Dyke Trans March is super fun. And then when I was driving around the country, I ended up trying to I did do one in Provincetown, Mass. And there's something about, Gabe. And then there's something about working class, people of color, queer, taking over the streets. And this one lady, she runs into the street. She's like, I've never stood up for anything. And I'm thinking, you've never had to stand up for anything in your life? And she's like, I own that bed and breakfast in Provincetown. And meh, meh, meh. So I think that's the importance of the Dyke Trans March, giving voice to local essential workers, as we now call ourselves, right? Versus working class, people of color. And by the way, the Equal Rights Amendment has still not passed. So I think that's good for a start.
Great. Alina, do you want to add into this conversation? Alina, if you're talking, you're
I'm just here to support and listen. Thank you for including me, though.
okay. I wanted to make sure. Is there anybody else who wants to add to that opening about what brought you to, I think we got everybody on that.
Well,
So
also
go, Venus.
Mariposa.
Yeah.
Mariposa is coming.
Okay, well, she's not here now, but she started she came back from New York and organized the Dyke March here in '93.
And also there must be a shout out to Laurel, who worked at Herland, and she was a fierce redhead, just amazing energy force. And I'm told that she was like, we need to have a Dyke March here in Santa Cruz. So I'm led to believe that she was part of the original force that got this ball rolling. It was a collaborative effort of everybody somebody had the idea, people having experiences, and then everybody saying yes, 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 and making it happen. And what I think is amazing about it is when I came here as a straight person, found myself as a realizing I was actually a queer person, and then going out and being able to find community like Herland in particular. And at the time, the Bagelry was very, and still is, like, it was a very, I asked the girls I worked with where to go to meet queer people, and they said the Bagelry, and I was like, really? Okay. But true. And but basically there was an amazing energy of, like, we were coming out of, like you said, all that stuff about basically the world was against us, including police, for a long time, and there was oppression. And so of course the response to that is going to be like, and so that's where a lot of this awesome Dyke energy was coming from in the beginning. Was, you know what, we're women, we're strong, we're going to protect ourselves, we're going to protect our people. And then that continued, like, we're going to protect kids, we're going to protect vulnerable people. Why? Because we're strong. We had this real kind of militant sort of vibe where we'd wear some cool, punky outfits and the boots, and we were pissed off and we were saying, no, what? No, we were putting a pause on this. We're not going to lay down anymore. And we wanted to inspire other people to find their voice. So when Melissa talks about that anger thing, like, for me, it's about finding the okay to be displeased. It goes to women's rights, about women not feeling comfortable using that voice. And so, the Dyke March is all about getting in the street and, waving your signs, putting your concerns. It's an individual thing. Like, what is your issue? Melissa is demonstrating right now her current issue and our current brainstorm about what the theme of our Dyke Trans March this year, 2020, should be about. Because yes, it's still going forward. We're just going to do it virtually, and we want everybody to make signs. What is your thing? So it's funny how when the Dyke March started, it was across the street at the Compass Rose. It was a milk carton and someone standing on it with a bullhorn, probably Gabe right there, saying something super awesome and powerful and inspirational. And then somebody would play guitar and sing a song, and then we'd march around town and we'd take over the streets, and people would heckle us and hang on the lampposts and say vile things, and we would just plow on through, and we just haven't stopped.
Well,
Right.
in subsequent, I'm just going to jump too, because we talk a lot. In the subsequent years, just around 99, we sort of brought it really out into the streets, and we did it with Pink Saturday. We blocked the streets. It was just a fuckload of fun, incredible, and took over the bars, and which at first were not, the patrons weren't that happy, and then the bar owners were like, oh, good, the Dykes can drink, so this is great. And it became a show, and it became there was as much of an audience for it, a street participatory action. We planned the Dyke March, but then we had breakout sessions where we had performances at 6 to 7 different places where we'd stop. Here's how you put a a rubber on a dildo and, you know, right downtown in front of the Cooper House kind of energy.
On.
It was a really explicit display of presence. And for me, you know, I'd already been schooled in fighting the cops, or, you know, fighting back against the DEA and the feds and getting arrested. So I have a different approach. Like, I'm a hothead paisan. I'm already like, just when I'm talking, that's normal for me to sound angry, but I'm actually not. And well, you know, I get pissed off, but I'm just saying this is just me being normal, sounds like this. So for me, it was to tone it, you know, to bring it into a language and a voice that could be understood. And if not fully accepted, on the radical edge, that was
I'm trying.
It's enticement, you know, makes people hungry to jump in and to get to think it's yummy, you know, or to be voyeurs, which turned out to be a great deal, you know, on a Saturday afternoon in the summer. A lot of visitors into our community who probably got to be queer after that, you know. Hey there. Hi.
I'm really confused.
Welcome. You're doing fine.
Everybody's confused, hon. It's the way it is.
Take me back to the beginning. How was there a group of people that came together?
Can I just do a check-in real quick? Can you hear me?
Go ahead. Yeah,
Okay.
We've been hearing you.
Were we supposed to be starting at 3 or 4? Or is this a practice round?
Actually,
Everything says 4.
You just showed up at a perfect time, because Rob's question that he was just asking could go right to you.
Right. No, but I'm asking a question of, like, are we starting now, or are we just doing a preliminary?
But I want to go back. So help me understand how you all came together for the first Dyke March. Was it, did you all come together and go down the streets, or was there a committee, or what did it look like? Help the people understand what the beginning looked like.
Well, I'd like to go back a few months to the beginning.
Okay.
Since I'm the co-founder with Laurel of Herland. I was at the March in Washington in April of 1993. The big march where we had the quilt and everything.
Right.
And that was where the first Dyke March happened. The Lesbian Avengers from New York created this event, and there were probably 100,000 Dykes marching in the streets. They didn't get a permit. They were marching to say, as women, it was a feminist issue. It wasn't just a queer, gay, lesbian issue, which was why it was called the Dyke March. And then we can go into the history of how we've all transformed over the years.
Can you move to your left a little bit so we can see your face better? There, that's better. Keep going.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. The reason it was called the Dyke March, and now it's called the Dyke Trans March, is because at the time, a lot of dykes, lesbians, butch women, women identified women born women with other women, felt left out of the big picture in the queer movement. And that's why we wanted to have a separate march where we were addressing issues that were relevant just for lesbians. At that time, I was in Washington, wasn't just for the march. I was there because I helped start Women Care for women with cancer, and there was a lesbian cancer meeting in Washington because women were dying just of breast cancer in 1 year more than all the years of AIDS up to that point. And I treat people with HIV AIDS and was at that time. Mm-hmm. So there was a very strong need to address women only issues. So even at our first march, we asked that women who identified as lesbians and our supporters marched in the back, including bisexual women. And I have an apology, and I've made apologies to my bisexual and trans friends, but this was kind of the separatist energy we needed at that time to get some women's issues addressed. And that's when we started to get funding for women's cancer clinics and so forth. So I just wanted to say that it started in 93, in June of 93. I had a casual conversation with Laurel from Herland, And I don't even remember who all was there, but we didn't get a permit. We marched in the streets. We met for a little while at the town clock, and that's what I remember. And I don't remember when everybody else started to get involved, but I was involved with the transition at some points, and then got busy with other things and kind of come in and out. So I just wanted to say
what were you doing in
that's
Santa Cruz at the time? What were you doing in Santa Cruz at the time, and when did you come to Santa Cruz?
I came to Santa Cruz for a 3-day visit in 1981, stayed 3 months, came out, changed my name, got arrested. I was doing acupuncture and working with the Santa Cruz AIDS Project and helping to start the women care for women with cancer. And being a lesbian Avenger, though I can't say that I swallowed fire, but I gave people aloe vera who did.
So that was so you stayed permanently after 83?
No, 1981, I came out
1981.
for a three-day, turned 3-month visit and officially moved here in 82.
Got it.
And
Okay.
briefly lived in Sonoma County and then moved back here since 1990.
So the sounds like the first gathering was some of you just doing it. So
Yeah.
how many people were there and what happened?
That's what I was trying to remember, and I've been calling people to see if anyone had pictures, because of course we didn't have cell phones then.
Right.
I didn't anyway. I remembered there was a lot, because there was a lot of energy from people having just been in Washington. And so that's
Were you part of a contingent that went to Washington from Santa Cruz then?
Yeah, I was with a few different contingents. Rabbi Eli, who wasn't a rabbi then, we did a whole group of us who were pagans, went to the march and did a ritual outside the Holocaust Museum. And that's another issue that came up for me as a Jewish lesbian, which is that even in the concentration camps, lesbians were put with other women that were just, other, like prostitutes or the gypsy women.
Yeah.
And we had black triangles, and a lot of people didn't even know about that.
Right.
So we did a big ritual there, and I was also with a women's cancer contingent, lesbian cancer contingent.
Wow. All right. So when did the rest of you kind of join into this? Were any of you at that first gathering, or if that was in 93, what brought the rest of you into it, and how do you keep it going today?
I was at that march in 93. I remember seeing you miracles on the street. That was wonderful.
I figured you were there.
Yeah. And I did swallow a little bit of fire. But it was that high from that Dyke march that I brought back to Santa Cruz. That was fundamental.
Yeah, I gotta say, Gabe always was bringing it. And when I was a young queer gal in town, I idolized Gabe. I just thought they were the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And
still do.
Yeah. And then to go to the Dyke March, because I went to the second one, and I remember something like rolling up to Herland a little uncertain about what was going on, and Stu being like, yeah, man, come on, we're going to the Dyke March. Something like that, like, come on, we gotta go, we're going, So I remember my first one being very much like a first timer and totally liberating and awesome. And I remember marching and loving it, and the signs and the energy. And I remember I was wearing men's underwear and I was kind of in a brief femme stage, so I was wearing this like purple mini dress, and I was flashing my man's underwear.
Where did you march from that year?
I do remember just marching. I think what we did is we marched down Pacific, and then you know how you have that island in there? I think we just turned around and marched right back.
Okay.
I quite remember. And then I also remember being at the Compass Rose, and there being a big performance by Gabe. Like somebody would perform some music, and there'd be some leaders in the community would take a moment on the megaphone, and then we'd take to the streets. And then I remember it evolving, you know, because I would sometimes be involved musically, but I just remember Sharon Papo. That must have been 1998, belly dancing in the Compass Rose. And that was really
That was 99. She started in 99.
Yeah, because we went to Burning Man in 99.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, at the end of that summer. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, 99. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, things were starting to get a bit more ramped up in the entertainment factor at that point.
Right.
You know,
I don't remember what year it was that we did some protest. And, you know, even though the Blue Lagoon has been, you know, was more of a queer bar back then, there were some issues that happened, and there were some issues outside of, I can't even remember the store now.
a riot one night or something. I don't remember I think there was like some sort of a brawl out the front one time.
Right. Well, there was something that was anti-lesbian, and even though, you know, anyway, so we did a stop at several places we called them places of shame for the incidents that they did. And what, you know, that was a milder one, but there were several that wouldn't, like, you know, like now we have the issue of gay cakes, but it was they wouldn't let two women hold hands in the store or something, and we all we kissed in front of the store.
Yeah.
Does anyone remember when that was?
That was fun.
I remember lots of kittens that were organized by the Lesbian Avengers in the old days, like in front of the Cooper House building, and they'd hand out the Hershey's Kisses that were purple for lesbian, because that's a color for lesbian, and the little paper said, "You've been kissed by a lesbian."
Right.
And people would show up and make out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so Mimi or Melissa, do you want to talk a little bit about when you went to your first Dyke Trans March and what it was like for you?
I think I did.
Okay.
But you know what? I also want to talk about how I know this is not going to be popular, but at one point the Diversity Center was like, you guys are too queer for the queers. Don't talk about it.
Well,
Don't talk about it.
Well, I mean, I think that happens. That's what incites action. It happens that there's pushback. I remember when I started to participate in the Dyke March in '98, or started to organize it, I was told I wasn't queer enough. I wasn't Dyke enough.
Well, now that you're talking about it.
Yeah, well, now that I'm talking about it, now means I'm not, because I noticed. And that was, are you Dyke enough? That was when we got the Dykes and put it on and it was, and Sage Lee, Bruce Lee helped do all those posters. And Joe, the fireman now, but he worked for me. Joe, you know, was worked with me at Wham. So it's like the things that push you, you know, governments make revolutionaries. All you have to do is stand somebody down, push them down.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that reminds me of how we also took on the Pink Saturday Party. And by we, I got to say that is Val Corral.
Yeah.
And you know, because I was not part of the collective at that time, but the first party at the Bulkhead Studios in the back, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
You know, was legendary. DJ Reb, like there are a lot of creative people behind this, like DJ Reb, and of course DJ AD, who has been playing Pink Saturday solidly for over a decade for free. Just a kind person, you know what I'm saying? And yeah, there's a lot of commitment, and the Homo Happy Hour has been nice for getting volunteers in. Wham has always provided the schmatzes, which is tents and decoration of our green room. You know, this is a pooled effort. We meet at the clock tower at noon, we decorate, and we set up a sound system. DJ Athonia has been wonderful at helping us run the board over the past few years with performers, and we always get burlesque and you know, sexy drag dancing. We've got Ryder Moore and Cyanide Sin, who has lent her talents countless times. And so, yeah, it really is a big family too. It's gotten to a point where it's almost on autopilot. It's just, you know, 6 months before we even start planning, I start getting people saying, yeah, by the way, confirm me, which is just really nice. You know, people really care and understand that the Dyke Trans March is like a very important component in our society. And it's a really important thing that we do every year. And it's very crucial that we keep it going. It's been, I think, 27 years this year. We're going to do it virtually, but it's so important that we can never drop the ball. And I'm so glad that Val, you picked the ball up.
Yeah.
What was that?
I like to throw things.
And then, so as you look back at the 26 years, aside from the very first year when it started, what were some of the other you've kind of mentioned this, but I'd like to just hear you speak about these separately. What were some of the key events or things that happened in what years, and what were they?
I want to talk about when we switched to Dyke Trans March and kind of the internal, there was a fervor both to change, to grow, to be, again, because everything happens because there's more energy poured into that and it doesn't become static. But that was 2011. And I think it was 2011. It was 2011.
Yeah.
And that's when we switched. And it's just because, you know, well, the truth of it is we look around and go, geez, we're all the Dykes. Oh, they're not, oh yeah, I see. They're different queer. They're different identity. It's queer-esque, queerness, queer magnified, queerdom. So what could you call it? You know, it became bigger than the terminology that we were confining. And I'm not going to say defining, confining. So we had to grow it. And yeah, we had to grow it. We had to have it fit. Now what happened is, and I think, you know, I was trying to think back, why did I get contacted from San Francisco Dyke March? And because they heard we were we come out ahead of them. We do our
Pride.
The first weekend, the first Saturday before Pride. So sometimes it's in May, and once in a while. It's the first weekend in June when Gay Pride is on that Sunday. We do it the Saturday before. And so what happened is I got contacted by a contingent of angry Dykes from San Francisco saying, what are you doing? Hey, it popped up. What do you know?
Yeah, we see you now. It's lovely.
Yeah,
So
keep
weird.
going. Keep going.
So
you were on the angry Dykes part.
What? Still am. And you know, it came down from San Francisco and contacted me to say, hey, you know, what are you doing, including trans? This is about lesbians, and pretty much said what I just said. I echoed that term. And the fact really is that we grew out of the confines of that terminology. And it didn't, you know, they didn't constrict us. They didn't make us change our language. As a matter of fact, it made it more fun because we got to be more snarky or rasty or whatever, and enter that piece, that 2011 inclusivity project, because we all realize that we're not defined by what it looks like. No, it never is. Death isn't even defined by what it appears to be. So
Great.
how could
What are the other key moments for other people?
It was always very gender friendly because back then we had trans women in Santa Cruz. There was a trans community, and there was also a gender queer. You know, we're always a little bit ahead of the game here in Santa Cruz, and we're also the land of the hippies. So you've got the peace and the love in there. Like we talk about the angry part, but we're also, we're all about the peace and love and the witchy side, you know, the pagan vibe and the unique individuality side. So, you know, when we looked at the Dyke March, we recognized that it was very gender fluid. So we have to be a reflection of the community that we serve. And it was a good 3-year conversation because in San Francisco, there was not only a refusal to be inclusive, but, you know, there was a lot of like activism going on there and sadness and hurt. And yeah, we're not going to go down that route. We wanted to not be oppressive. We want to be inclusive. That's who we are. And that's why a lot of us live in Santa Cruz, because it really feels good to live here and feel that support. You
Can
know?
we do a shout out to the Museum of Art because they have hosted the Big Saturday party one year. So
That was fun putting that part
That
down.
was a good time, yeah.
But they remember that we had to put up paper in the windows so that we could take off our clothes, so that for our whatever it was that we were doing, doing some of that. Yeah, we did. It was like really kind of.
Oh, I remember what it was. It was because of maybe the Earth lovers, those dirt fuckers.
The dirt fucker.
Oh God!
The mud.
And
What year was that?
parade.
I know, where was I?
Annie and Beth.
Yes. Echo lover.
Oh, I thought you meant the
Eco
mud
Fest.
parade.
No.
Now Annie and Beth, well, they'll always make everybody cringe. I love that.
Was there a mud parade one year?
No.
I
No,
think it's
Annie
an
and Beth,
ongoing parade.
what is that?
We did have women
Planet.
topless.
There's the Echo Sexuals, and they were putting on a little show, and it was a little raunchy. Echo, there was a sexy garden loving and stuff, and there might have been a flash of flesh. So yes, you have to have deeper.
Sorry,
so,
I missed that.
we had after parties at cool places. I think that's where we're going here, where we had a heck of a big legendary dance party in what is now 2030 North Pacific Avenue. That whole corner got developed, but before it was an art gallery and a cool, what is art community hangout.
Yeah.
And it was also had a really big parking lot, and we had a dance party.
Yeah.
That was epic. And that comes into Mimi's role. Mimi was often security. Mimi was, we had to have some security. So, Mimi was like watching that gate and being in charge of that stuff a bit. And, Gabe was there too for that, I believe. And Artemis was in on that. And meanwhile, DJ Rebs making the scene happen. And then we had a big, cool production at the MAH. And then we
Remember that one.
We were going to have a big production at Bocce's Cellar this year, and it was going to be the first year that someone actually said free of charge, like, I want to do this for the community and not charge you guys. Shout out to Urbani's Cellar, because that's their name now. We had a lot of fun there the past few years with our after party, and it was really nice that, because somebody alluded earlier that, you try to get space and it's like, oh, a queer event? I don't know how to handle this. I don't want to say
Well,
no.
we were in the Portuguese Hall one year too.
That was a good time.
That was a great party, yeah. And downstairs in the that year, the Sister Spit was on the streets with us. They were amazing. And Lynn Breedlove was there. And we were downstairs in the Vets Hall.
Right.
That was good too. That was probably
the year,
early
I think,
2000. I think that was 2001.
I think that's when Sharon belly danced, is when I remember her.
Did belly dance at that one also.
Also, she did it lots of years. We used to get her to gyrate.
And that brings us back to where we're at with San Francisco now. It really is important to point out that they're a big city and they have a bigger turnout and bigger numbers in their community. So if they throw a separate trans march, it's still a huge freaking event. And when we throw an exclusively trans march, it's a bit smaller, and I mean, people are welcome to do that. If anybody at any time would like to change it up, because of who knows what future things might make it cool to do so at the time. But, the thing is we are a smaller community, and when we band together, we make a lot more visibility and support for each other. And we all are members of all these different communities, because many people just identify many different ways, and I'm one of them, you know.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
So you know, on that note, it's not, because we're smaller, we're more connected, and we are observing and are touched by the changes that our
What?
comrades are
know.
evolving
Apologize.
into, and it pushes and
Post-
stretches us in the way that we look at the world, the way that we live in the world, who how definitions grow and change, and how we look at that kind of evolution. What is human evolution, and what is it in the space of time and many lives, and what is it within the space of our own experience, our own personal evolution. So to not
Right.
recognize it and to marginalize is a deep awareness of marginalization and separatism. So in my little brain, in my little world, and you know, and we're smaller, yeah, but because of that, we're more connected.
yeah.
That's true of so much of Santa Cruz queer history. That's the story we hear over and over. By way of closing this out, just for the recording part anyway, I'd love to hear from each one of you to talk a little bit about what do you consider to be the legacy, the long-term legacy of the Santa Cruz Dyke Trans March?
Evolution.
Acceptance.
Inclusivity.
Inclusivity. Mm-hmm.
Security.
Yeah.
Kindness as well, making space for people.
Right.
We really do try to reach out and make the shy people feel safe. And also, you know, when we have people come from other cities and towns, we love getting to share our thing. And yeah, people have good
Yeah, in fact, I want to say that I'm still friends with Katie Mack, who came and stayed with me one year for a Dyke March. And, you know, like she's got like a 6-year-old kid in Canada now, you know, and we've stayed in touch ever since.
Yeah, that's
It's been
right. You
wonderful.
contacted us and you said, come sleep on the couch.
Yeah.
You know, I wanted to say one more thing. I think that what's really profound about being in the motion, this motion, is that I don't know how that got driving. That's just like so weird.
Where'd you go? But keep going. You're very articulate. Keep going.
So I don't really know. I just want to say that one of the most interesting pieces for me is that as we change and as we grow, we've really recognized that inclusivity is not only about how we accept one another and make room for one another, but the kind of awareness that comes from that for our own personal growth and change, and the really remarkable opportunity that exists to be able to stretch ourselves, to think in different ways, and to step outside of our own limitations. Because when we're not doing that, we notice those around us and how they are, and it pushes us. And that's one of the great things about the small town. It isn't that small, but our part of it is, you know, it's a deep acceptance, and that helps. It's helped me to become less judgmental and to look at it when I am. And I'll say that as I age, because like I got old during these years, you know, that happened. And there's still room for that within our context. There's not in a lot of places. The older you get, the less accepted you can be. And that just doesn't happen here. It's really, that's something sublime about that for me.
And happy early birthday to these Geminis, Miss Valerie, Miss Venus.
The V's.
Yeah, I think that
two-legged.
You know, before I came to Santa Cruz, I was, you know, part of a very long activist community. I was actually the first Food Not Bombs meal was cooked in my kitchen in Cambridge, and I was very close with Keith. And I was actually, you know, a heterosexual when I came here, and I was then
Like
I
many
became
people.
a bisexual, you know,
Blonde.
and like many, right? And so it took me a while to. I was probably one of the ones that resisted more the include the change of the name, because of course I was attached a little bit because I helped start it, so there was that ego attachment. But it was also, I wanted to make sure, just like I said at the beginning, that the issues of women that are specific to biological women were still going to get addressed, because I'm a healthcare worker. So it came out of that need to make sure that we weren't becoming invisible when we were becoming part of a queer movement rather than defined as a, you know, lesbian movement. And if you went to the early Dyke marches in San Francisco, they were very political. I mean, there was partying and music and marching and, you know, drumming and stuff like that, but there was a huge emphasis on making sure we were still partnered with cis women that were straight, that were, you know, getting raped and getting pregnant, and lesbians were not allowed into most of the battered women shelters because they didn't know who the batterer was, you know, if it's two women. There was a lot of issues that were dealt with in the politics, and that's why I think by the time it became an issue here in Santa Cruz, we had dealt with a lot of those things individually, whereas they hadn't so much in San Francisco because it is so big. And
Right.
Venus says, you know, they have enough people at the Trans March to really make a good showing, and for trans people to be able to have issues that are unique to them too at this time, you know, presented with support. And I think it's all about support, and it's all about not, just like in a marriage or relationship, not losing yourself to be a part of the whole, that you still have your identity and needs. And I used to joke that it was more, for me, it was about making sure that I was, you know, picking up on other lesbians, because I, you know,
Any other final
didn't want to
words?
flirt up the wrong tree.
That does touch on what it's really all about, is literally equality. And that's why, you know, we did evolve, I think, as a trans march too, because we were all still the same people. Like, I started identifying as trans in about late 99. You know, Stu came out, a lot of our core people, you know, came out as trans men. So are they not allowed at the Dyke movement anymore? As a matter of fact, no. You know,
Okay, so we really decided it just wouldn't be as much fun.
we had to ride it, but it's a great ride, and it's really wonderful. So, you know, I would love to say that
Yeah.
it's wonderful. It's a very heartwarming event. It makes me feel good, and it's great to be here with all you beautiful people.